Hello everybody, my name is King6. I'm a master tier player in League of Legends, and today I want to show you my current setup I use for my hotkeys and controls in League of Legends. Starting off on my hotkeys, you don't really have to change any of this. This is fine for your abilities and summoner spells. If you're new to the game, you might consider turning off quick cast for all of your abilities because you don't really know the length or how far they go or in which direction. But if you've been playing the game for a while or you're level 30, I suggest leaving these on. I also personally set all my items to quick cast. I especially like it on my trinket because I can, for example, lay a trinket ward just really quick. And as you notice, whenever I go to lay a trinket, there's this annoying little circle and I have to let go of the key before it lays. It's not just instant. I personally highly recommend turning that off, and to do that, just click right here. It's this stupid setting. Replace quick cast with indicator and quick bind UI. I don't know why that's automatically on, but I personally find it very frustrating. If you like it, that's good for you, but I personally hate it. Next, I go into player movement, and then I change my attack move click to R. A lot of you have noticed that this little red thing is called attack move click. Use it so you don't click past stuff. For example, I'm attacking this at my max range. This is my max range right here. Do you see that circle? I'm hitting it right on the tip. So this red thing ensures that I don't walk closer than I need to. Like, I can still move closer and then click it and do it in between clicks to automatically hit it. So I can click right here and it'll attack whatever enemy is closest to the red click. So even if I do it right there, as long as it's within my circle, it'll still hit him. Very nice. This is really good if you're playing anything that's range and ADC or range attacks in general. It'll help you not to overclick. It'll help you get in with the very edge so you'll take less damage and play it safer. Things like that. It's really good for AD carries and team fights too. So I put that on my R, and for my ultimate, I put it on T. I've never really accidentally clicked my ultimate when it's on T. Plus, since it's on R, it's just one slight finger adjustment away from using my ultimate. Another thing that I like to do is under communication, there's a ping that you can't normally access unless you hotkey it to a button or a mouse click. So here, there is it's the area is warded ping. You want to use this whenever you're a jungler or whenever you're a laner and you want to warn your jungler if an area is warded so they don't gank it. So here, I'm just going to task it to a button I can easily click. On my mouse, I have a button set on Alt 3. So I just clicked on it, pressed the mouse button. Now I have it. So here, look, and it says enemy vision is here. So let's say right here, I'm like, oh, don't go over here. It's warded. It's a really good ping, and you can only access it by going into your hotkeys, scrolling down to communication, and then accessing it here under areas warded. The only other thing I touch in my hotkeys is ability and summoner spells, and I only do this for Morgana and Janna. All I do is change the quick cast E to one of my mouse buttons I can easily press. That way, whenever I'm in lane, let's say this is my ally and this is an enemy, whenever they go to throw out a skill shot or an auto attack and I'm not sure who they're going to throw it at, I can just simply hover my mouse over my teammate, press my shield to shield them. Or if they end up going for me, even though my mouse is over here so I don't have to bring it all the way back and risk not clicking it in time, I can simply click my mouse button and it'll shield myself instead. So I can hover here, block him, and even if they go for me, I just press the mouse button and I'm fine. That way I can have my cursor in different areas and be a lot faster reaction times. That's pretty much it for the hotkeys. There's nothing else to really say about it here. You can go in and tinker around with some other settings, but I personally don't find them very helpful or useful at all. All right, now in video tab, just make sure your resolution is the max it can be because it'll give you crisper quality. If your computer sucks, you might have to bring it back so that way you can have at least 60 frames per second. Normally this is on full screen, but I had to change it to borderless before I started this, otherwise OBS won't actually record it. If you're playing the game and you're not recording and you just want pure quality and no latency, go full screen because full screen does reduce latency by a little bit. It's going to be your highest quality. But if you are recording or something, borderless is the way to go, in my opinion. It makes it really easy to tab out. Also, OBS won't record for some reason unless you're in borderless. It can't recognize the window. I like to turn off use relative team colors. That way I know what side is which. So now this is always blue side and this is always red side. If you have this on, regardless of your starting side, let's say I started on this side, it would show this is blue for me. One thing I like to do is colorblind mode. I'm not actually colorblind, but I just find it makes things easier to look at for me and I can tell the difference between stuff. If you have really bad graphics, this slider is useless, to be honest. Like, you can do it on very high if you have a good computer, but I personally don't like shadows because it just overtaxes your GPU and shadows don't actually do anything in this game. So environmental quality, I leave everything else on very high. I turn off shadows. If you have a bad computer, you should just turn this all on low, turning shadows off because shadows are a waste. They really tax your GPU. And one thing I'll say is having your frames on uncapped is actually really bad. Honestly, overruns your GPU, your graphics card. For example, 160 frames isn't doing anything for me. It looks the same as if I was running it on 80 frames. Technically, your eye can only see 60 frames per second, unless you're maybe like a different animal or species. But if you're a Homo sapien, a human being, your eyes can only see 60 frames per second. It's a fact. The only reason why you ever want to have it higher than 60, because on most video games, including League of Legends, what's happening in the game is moving faster than 60 frames per second. So you might be getting a slight lag or latency. So bumping it up to 80 and up is usually for the better. Anything over 80 is honestly overkill. You really need to check your monitor specs. In my case, even though my monitor is 60 hertz and it technically can't show me more than 60 frames in a second, I can still set it at 80, and those 80 frames will be fresher than those 60 frames. I know it might not make sense, but you can watch videos on it. And I find that 60 frames helps reduce screen tearing for me. So things look really smooth right now. Nothing looks tearing at all. But if I set it on 60, look, you see that like you might not see it. Hey, look at that. 60 FPS. I don't know if you guys can tell or not, especially after I render it in Sony Vegas, but there's definitely screen tearing. So if your computer can handle it, I highly suggest going 80 frames and up. There's no reason to do uncapped. That's just if you're retarded or you don't understand how computers work. You need to stay away from anti-aliasing. This is only if you have a bad computer. And same thing for wait for vertical sync. These two settings right here, if you're running like 30 frames or less, you basically have to use these. But overall, these add latency to your clicks and to what you're doing. So I highly suggest not activating these. They're only if you have a really shit machine that can't properly run graphics or anything like that. All right, for the sound, this doesn't really matter. This is just personal preference. I usually have this at 50 to 30, especially if I'm playing at night. I'll have it quieter because I usually use my speakers and they're kind of loud. And I usually turn down music volume a little bit. Doesn't really matter. And I might turn down ping volumes just a little bit, just in case there's someone spamming pings. But other than that, this all should be fine. All right, interface, there's a few things we're gonna have to change. So currently, you look how much of our screen, this is taking up a massive chunk of our screen, and our minimap is tiny. So what I like to do in my interface, I make my HUD as small as it gets because you don't even need this. This is useless information. I make the HUD small. I make the chat, you see how big the chat is? It's huge, it's taking up too much screen. I make the chat to where I can read it. It just depends on your eyesight. For me, I can comfortably read it at 0, but I usually leave it around 30 just so people in my videos, because I make YouTube videos obviously, I like to leave it at 30 so people in my videos can see it. Minimap scale, obviously I put it at 100. For a minimap scale, I obviously have it on 100. You won't usually see practice tool scale unless you're in the practice tool. I am right now. Enable HUD animations doesn't actually matter. You can just have that if you want. For your notifications, I like to turn this off, show new player tooltips. That can be really annoying. If you have really slow reaction times, you might want to turn on screen flash on damage, because if you don't realize you're being hit, this might help you out. I personally don't bother with that because I can tell when I'm being hit. And then champion highlight on camera center. I actually like this. That's whenever I hold down my space bar in a team fight, that way I'll know where I am. It puts me in the very center of my screen. It puts me in the highlight, and I also put this little circle around me in a V. If I were to turn this off, then when I hold down space, I can still see me in the center, but it's not quite as obvious. Turning on show spell cost is good because you can see the numbers right here on top of the spells. I see 100, 65, 80, and 80. That way I can quickly do math in my head. I can know how many spells I can do before I run out of mana without actually having to hover over and looking underneath the name to see the mana. I can just see it right here without having to hover my cursor over it. Disable spell HUD click, you might as well leave that on just in case your keyboard breaks and you have to click on your spells. That way you don't have to come in and try to find this. This is where things get a little bit arbitrary. For my minimap, I just like having it on the left. I think it looks cleaner. I'm pretty sure I'm left eye dominant. You need to figure out if you're left eye dominant or right eye dominant. That should determine where your minimap is. For show summoner names, there's no point. It just gets in the way. It's too much extra information. It'll just show up here and it's extra information you don't need to see, so there's no point in bothering with it. So show team frames on the left. If you prefer having it here, it's probably also better to have your minimap on the left. That way it's a shorter distance for your eyes to travel to see these here and your minimap right here. I personally like having them right here. That way I can see them all at once. I can see Jax is getting hit. I mean, I need to go help him here in a second. These are bots though, so I'm not actually screwing over my teammates by not moving right now. I like to have my chat timestamps on. That way, whenever I type something, for example, let's pretend I want to call out Wukong's flash. I would just say Wu. I could just say Wu flash right now, so it's 3:45. I know flash has a 5-minute cooldown, so I know it'll be up at 8:45. If you want to do the extra effort, you could just type in Wu flash 8:45. And what I like to do whenever I type that in, for my team's benefit, I'll just copy and paste it right here. Control C. I'll type it, and then later, like maybe a couple minutes later, I'll just click enter, Control V, and then they can see it again if they need to. All right, so we have timestamp selected. Show all chat. If you're playing ranked, you really shouldn't have all chat open. You shouldn't be seeing what the enemies are typing. It doesn't help you out, and it'll just distract you from the game. So if you're in normals and you like having fun and socializing, sure, but if you're in ranked, you really shouldn't have that on. I usually don't have it on. And the combat text, I don't like having experience show because I feel like it clutters up my screen. It can be really helpful, especially if you don't realize how much experience minions or monsters give you. It's also really nice if you don't realize from which areas you can get experience. For example, if I'm like over here and I get experience, I'll know it's from these minions. One thing I have learned over time as a jungler is if I stand right here, I can leech XP off of the mid laner. Did you see that? How my bar is going up? I came over here and selected experience, and now I should be able to see it without having to look at this little bar. Also, mana isn't that useful because whenever you use a spell, it'll just say how much mana you use. But since we see how much it is right here, then there's really no point in having that in my opinion. So I just leave that off as well. All right, and the only thing I don't really change anything in here other than the camera move speed of the keyboard. I bumped that up to 50, so when I use the arrow keys on the keyboard, I can quickly search around. I might actually want to bump that up so it moves quicker. I could live with it on 65. Okay, this is about perfect for me. I can move that around pretty quick. And my mouse settings, I already have my mouse set up, so I like to leave this at 50 just because that's what I'm used to. We're down to the last settings here, guys. I like to have auto attack enabled. That way, whenever I move to a spot, and let's say there's a minion, I'll automatically hit it. So if I'm just like walking around right here and then Wukong comes out of nowhere, I can just automatically throw out an auto without clicking on anything. I think this is useful if you're playing a lot of support and you don't like accidentally risking killing your AD carries minions. You might want to leave this off, but I personally find this to be helpful, so just go ahead and leave that on. Use movement prediction is useless unless your like network's crappy. It's just kind of makes it laggy and weird. I don't like it. You should just be using attack move click. But if for some reason you're not using attack move click and you're just using attack move, if you enable this, it'll just make it to be attack move click where it'll attack whatever is closer to your red thing. If you leave it off, it'll just attack whatever's closest to your champion. And then this only works if you're playing co-op versus AI, so it doesn't matter. You should have this enabled so it can help you learn when you're playing first co-op versus AI. Show turret ranged, it's pretty good. And that's it for my settings and hotkeys that I use. I don't really have anything special, just some really basic stuff, but it really does help me play. I've told you guys every setting I use in League of Legends in terms of hotkeys and controls. If you guys are interested, my mouse speed is 2000 DPI. That's what I normally use. If I'm playing something like Overwatch, I of course bump that down, but for League it's 2000. And the polling rate is 500. Alright guys, and that's about it. The 3 biggest things I showed you guys in my opinion that will actually help you out and that aren't arbitrary is making your HUD size much smaller to 0 basically, and making your minimap to 100. You want it to be as big as possible. Second thing is you want to have the timestamp on your chat so that way you know when it was typed. It will give you a better understanding of when summoners are up or where somebody is on the map. The third and final thing that I highly recommend you guys do is go ahead and task the special ping that signals that enemies have vision to a button on your mouse or on a keyboard that you can easily click. That way, if your junglers come to gank, that way you can be like, oh look, they have vision here, don't come there. Or you could click it in multiple different places, or you can click it like all around the map to be a troll. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap up this video. Thank you all so much for your support and feedback. It really does help me out a lot. I'm really excited about how the channel's been growing lately. It makes me really want to make more content for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.